Yes, sir. The Devil's Puck Luck podcast, where, of course, we are your hosts over here, Adam Armbrecht, covering the potentially, as we do this live, the Brooklyn Nets maybe evening up that series on the Locked On Nets podcast with Doug Norrie, also the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast. And, of course, we're joined, as always, by my friend, your cousin, other way around, Danny McDonough, 20-year season ticket holder. Buddy, we are on the cusp of Devils, Rangers, first-round playoff hockey. Maybe we wanted it later.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, but there's a lot of history between these two teams.
Obviously. Yeah, I mean, we can always talk about the wishing it was the 1-8 matchup, in the East. But listen, playoffs, it's what it is now. This is what we're going to be dealing with, which we might be dealing with a lot, actually, moving forward in the next couple of years. Devils, Rangers playing in the first round if they get the 2-3 seeds. So yeah. I'm excited. This series, I think, is very evenly matched. I think there's a lot of things that you love about the Devils in this matchup. I think there's a lot of things that might concern you. So, right off the bat, let's just start with the goaltending, and Igor Shesterkin, who was phenomenal in goal for the Rangers last year. Vitek Vanecek, who had a phenomenal year for the Devils. What do you see going in? Do you think there's too much overblown about experience with playoff hockey? Do you think that's kind of out the window? Do you think that matters?
No, it matters, man. Listen, Vitek has 3 games on his postseason record and a 1-1 win-loss record in those, and a 4.25 goals against. Mm-hmm. So now that's far too small of a sample size to matter at all relative to what we expect from him. But the question still comes, what is he going to do in playoff hockey? Now, there's things that the defense needs to do in front of him. I think that people are looking at that matchup and saying, well, clearly it's an advantage for the Rangers. Yes. That can very quickly go out the door, though. It just depends on how Vitek starts this series and how dialed in he can be. He's been very consistent over the course of a full season in terms of his goals against. Mm-hmm. It's just going to come down to whether or not he's able to lock in here. And I want to get into the styles of play that are going to come in here. But I mean, how do you see that? Are you expecting to be a clear gap between the quality?
I think that what you're talking about too is Igor is, on paper, he's going to be that better, more experienced goalie. There's nothing wrong with saying that, and that's no discredit to Vitek Vanecek, who
has a track record.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I think some of it is overblown. I think that the way the team is playing now, you can't look at Vitek's performance in the 3 games in the playoffs. That's out the window. You forget those stats. Yeah. I think the way the team is playing and how they've been playing, being more aggressive, being more responsible defensively, is obviously going to play a factor in how Vitek plays as well. As good as your team is playing in front of you is how well your goaltender is going to play, and how well your goaltenders play is how well the team is going to play in front of you as well.
So here's the 2 things then for me off of the goaltending, because we know that the Devils are a fast team, right? They're going to go ahead and try to push that puck and just really, hopefully, as they did at the back end of this regular season, fire those shots on net. But from a Vitek perspective, it's things that the Devils started to improve on. And that's the defensive assignments, right? It's staying in front of your man. It's disrupting the passing lanes. It's blocking shots. I think it is a both and, right? That defensive play needs to be sound consistently so Vitek has reliability. And that is probably where you look at the Rangers and say they feel like they have that reliability.
Right, and the dozen games that we went to the season, half dozen, whatever it was, what do we always talk about? Block shots. The Devils blocking shots, getting in the lanes, being responsible defensively. But more importantly, I think, too, looking on the opposite side of it, you don't want to have 40 shots on goals if you're the Devils and have it with nobody in front. You don't want bad look shots, right? Yeah. You want traffic in front. You want odd man rushes, which I think where the Devils need to expose the Rangers. I don't care what anybody says. We're going to go to Patrick Kane real quick. Patrick Kane has a phenomenal track record. Yeah. Stanley Cup winner, amazing player. He's lost a step. He's battling a hip injury. He is, to me, a liability for the Rangers because he's going to turn the puck over.
Okay.
And I think that the Devils need to expose that, especially with Tarasenko, too. They're going to get their chances. They're high-risk players. They're going to make passes like Jack Hughes would make for the Devils. Sure. They're going to get aggressive with some of their passing, So I think that the Devils need to expose some of those turnovers, get those odd man rushes, and get in Igor Shesterkin's head early, get an early goal. I think that's very important in the series for every game. We always talked about it in the regular season, the fast start. It's immensely important against the Rangers this series.
Do you think that essentially, like, the Devils have their style of play?
Right.
And they either execute or they don't. And that's not a negative, but they're a young team, and that's what they need to accomplish. The Rangers, I think, can play different versions of their game. Yes. Now, the Devils are the faster team, but you mentioned about these turnovers potentially. Think about the neutral zone. Is it a benefit at all to you that the Rangers are not going to be a team that if the Devils turn it over in the neutral zone, it could be that bang, bang goal scored, whereas the other way, you have to capitalize on those opportunities.
It's a hard question to answer, right? Because I think it all is going to depend on how well the lines are rolling. You know what I mean? And if there's consistencies to the lines.
And the shift changes, by the way.
And the shift changes. Listen, that's super important as well. I think the Devils are a better team up and down the ice, breaking out of their own defensive zone. And I think that they can have more odd man rushes. What we have to really, really worry about is the Trubas, the Jacob Truba, right? He is going to put bodies on everybody. Mm-hmm. He is going to hit everybody in the open ice. He's had some massive hits for the Rangers this year. I think we have to match the physicality like we did in the 2-1 victory. Jacob Truba didn't play most of that game, right? He got hurt early, right? I believe he got hurt early, if I remember correctly. So he didn't play most of that game. We won 2-1. Vitek had a great game. Defense played awesome. Rangers defense was fine, and Graves with that save, in the crease with 55 seconds left. The type of game that game one is going to be, I think that both teams are going to feel each other out, right? I think if we do that too long in game one against the Rangers, it's going to play into the Rangers. Yeah. We need to come out fast, loose, take some chances, rely on Vitek. It's his time to shine, He doesn't necessarily have to match Igor save per save, but he needs to potentially steal a game like Igor can steal a game. Yeah. And it comes back to we do have the faster type of play, faster type of breakouts. But the Rangers, listen, they got goal scorers. Yeah. Zibanejad can score. Canes can score. Tarasenko can score. So we have to be careful, no matter what we do with turnovers.
And it's funny too, man, because you go and you look at, point totals. 3 of the top 5 highest points totals for the New Jersey Devils are defensemen. Mm-hmm. So there's this commitment on both ends of the ice from those guys, and they're going to be critical. The last thing for me, and you're going to hear us talk about predictions in this series. We're going to talk about other certainly key matchups that we're watching for here. But power play. I mean, listen, man, the Devils do play fast. They can have some turnovers. If they take a bad penalty or two and they have to go onto the penalty kill, we know they're successful on that end of the ice when it comes to that, but they flat out have struggled on the power play with consistency. So those are going to be key moments to me early in this series.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to be moving the puck. It's moving the puck on the power play. Don't be sloppy with your entry. I think that we're just trying to be way too finesse when it comes to entering the zone. Enter the zone, be solid on your forecheck, even on the power play. Utilize Timo Meier on the power play the way he needs to be utilized. He's a big body that can really make or break the Devils' #1 power play unit.
I'll highlight, since you brought him up here, I extrapolated out. He was a -19 with San Jose. He's played neutral plus minus. Now, San Jose is a bad team, so it's hard to really get your stats up.
Which is why people don't really like the plus minus stats.
Right.
Because if you're on a bad team, you're going to be a minus, even if you're a great player.
The classic that Doug Norrie and I always use on the Nets is like, when do we like to use plus minus? When it helps make our point. When it doesn't, you go ahead and you don't bother with it. But I extrapolated out his stats. His time with the Devils at the back end of this season, over an 82-game season, it makes him a 35 goal scorer, 20 assist kind of guy. In theory, you can really get behind him like that, but I don't know if that's enough. His point totals wouldn't be where you would expect it to be for a guy that we'll talk about later, but a guy that you expect to be getting a pretty sizable contract here.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have Nico Hischier type numbers. He's going to put up 35, 40 goals, in my opinion. I think he's going to be anywhere from 30 to 40 goals a year. Point being, for the playoffs, he has to play like Nico Hischier plays, very defensively responsible, but he is that big body. He's going to hit people way more than Nico Hischier is, and we love to see the grit that Nico Hischier's shown in the last couple games. But
the willingness is there, but is the body able for a 7-game series potentially?
It's just the way he's built, right? It's the way his gameplay is. They're both going to forecheck, aggressively forecheck. And it's what we always talk about, the 1A, 1B, 1C lines. Yep. I don't agree that they're 1, 2, and 3 lines. Timo Meier is technically on the 3rd line. That's a 1C line. That is an amazing line, with Hall being the center on that line. So to me, just have all lines rolling, the BMW line, the 4th line, the importance of how well they have to play against a team like the Rangers is going to really be a strong point of the Devils coming out of the series with a win.
You better believe it, man. Stay tapped into us over on YouTube, Devils Puck Luck, over on Twitter with NJ Devils PL, on Instagram.
Devils Puck Luck. And before we go, let's do the prediction now.
You want to do it right now?
Yeah, I want to do the prediction
You want to go now?
We're going to go now. And next series, this segment here, we'll talk about more players for the Devils and key in on players, and then let's do an overall NHL prediction kind of thing.
Okay, so you can go as far as you want in this, because I actually thought about it before we got on. What I'm willing to say is the New Jersey Devils will be up 3-2 going to Game 6. Because in my mind, I was going to say Devils in 6. And I was like, well, that's, this is a tough matchup. But then I thought, go to game 7 against the Rangers. You'll be at home, but they're an experienced veteran team. Do I like those chances? I think that we could be in a scenario where the Devils are up.
Okay.
And you can make the case that the Rangers should have, won that key game and be up a game, going home, going to Madison Square Garden. I think the Devils will be up in this series, and it's going to come down to what you talked about, playing fast, getting out there, putting the pressure on the Rangers potentially to overcommit and have some more of those odd man rushes. So I'll say 3-2 going to game 6, and we'll see how these first handful of games unfold in the series.
I'm going to say one of the first 2 games is going to go to overtime. I think that these games are going to be extremely tight. A lot of people are predicting a lot of unders, under 6.5 goals a game, 3-2 types of games, 2-1 types of games again. I think you're going to see games like 5-4. I really think that there's going to be some open ice in this series. I think that you're going to see some of the scorers make the plays they need to make.
If this is the higher the goal scoring is on a game-to-game basis, is more likely to me one of 2 things. From a Devils positive perspective, it's that they're forcing the pace and there's a lot of goal scoring, and I think that plays more into their favor and their style. The other way it is, we talk about overs, not that it matters, is the Devils are trailing and they're pressing and there's odd man rush goals, empty net goals, those types of things. And I think, listen, if I'm being honest, while I believe the Devils can and will win this series, there's a game in here, 5-2 loss for the Devils. I think that's in here somewhere for them.
I think that we both agree that this series is going 6 or 7. I think this is going to be a long series. I think both teams are very evenly matched. They're not far off in the standings. They weren't far off in the standings. Some play, early in the season was phenomenal by the Devils. Then we had a slump. Same with the Rangers. They were up and down. Very similar type teams. There's a lot of strong suits for the Devils, a lot of strong suits for the Rangers. I'm going to go in and say that these 2 games at home for the Devils, this arena, the Rock, needs to be extremely loud and crazy. And I want to see more Devils fans there. I know we always talk about the Rangers showing up at Prudential Center. It's going to happen. But I want to see a 65-35 Devils. I think it's going to be more 55-60 Devils, but we'll see what's happening. I'm going to say Devils in 6. I think the Devils are going to win in overtime in Madison Square Garden on the Rangers ice in game 6. And I think Jack Hughes is going to score an overtime winner, and the Devils are going to win in 6.
I'll commit to it right now, just so you know it, that Luke Hughes will be playing in this series for the Devils, and I will not be shocked if he actually does get at least a shift on a power play at some point along the way.
Okay.
I believe that impact is there for him, and I think they're going to be able to utilize him, especially if you feel like you're up in a game, and he can help unlock that a little bit more, just be a little bit more dangerous.
My dark horse?
Yeah.
Tomas Tatar has an incredible series against the Rangers, getting some dirty goals in front of the net.
Reiterating that when the stat helps you, highest plus minus on the team. So sometimes when the numbers work, you lean into them.